Hello and welcome to the Cinementalist podcast for Cinementalist.com. My name's Andy. Sitting next to me is Floki, our bearded dragon mascot, and sitting opposite me is Liam, our film reviewing mascot. How are you, dude?
Film reviewing mascot.
I know it's a bit of a demotion.
It's a bit
really,
patronising, isn't it? Why are you being such a dick?
My co-host and business partner, friend of many, many years, Liam. How are you? You sound like you're in a jovial mood this week.
Yeah, I'm pretty good, thanks, man. How about you?
Yeah, all right, thank you. Yeah,
Good stuff.
Everything's been trucking along.
Goody gumdrops haven't been reinfected yet.
No, New Year is going surprisingly well from this point onwards. Now we got that out of the way. I like to think, maybe we got all the bad shit out early.
Well, yeah.
And now it's just smooth sailing.
Crossed, yeah. 2022, the grandest year of our lives.
By the end of the year, we'll be millionaires. The Cinementalist podcast will be known worldwide. We'll be competing with Mark Kermode. It's going to be a good year, man.
Stranger things have happened.
Yeah, I mean, not much.
That's what I keep telling myself.
But yes, welcome to another episode of the Cinementalist podcast. As usual, Liam's got a couple of film reviews coming up for you. I've got some TV. But before then, let's do a bit of news. Let's start out with this one from Variety.com. Bong Joon-ho sets next movie at Warner Brothers with Robert Pattinson in talks to star. So, Oscar-winning director Bong Joon-ho, who's made awards history with his genre-bending thriller Parasite, is making his next feature film at Warner Brothers. Robert Pattinson, who will soon appear as the Caped Crusader in The Batman, is expected to star in the science fiction story and an adaptation of Edward Ashton's upcoming novel Mickey 7. According to the book's publisher, St. Martin Press, the high-concept cerebral thriller is best described as The Martian meets Dark Matter. The tale is about an expendable, a disposable employee on a human expedition sent to colonize the ice world Niflheim, who refuses to let his replacement clone, dubbed Mickey 8, take his place. In an early review, author Jason Pargin called the novel a unique blend of thought-provoking sci-fi concepts, farcical relationship drama, and exotic body humor.
Exotic body humor.
Exotic body humor is the phrase.
Mean?
I have no idea what that means. I would sort of get erotic body humor.
I thought you were about to say body horror.
No, yeah, body humor. Unless the article is wrong, but it's Variety.
Is that like fat shaming? I mean, like in a dude bro way. I mean,
maybe, yeah, I guess. But is Bong Joon-ho doing sci-fi? I mean, yes, please. I'm sort of down.
Yeah,
for
absolutely. Yeah, well, I like Bong Joon-ho, and I mean, I know that you're not particularly a fan, but I do like Pattinson. I like him in a lot of stuff that I've seen him in. So. Yeah, I think he's a growing talent. So, yeah, I'll be keeping my eyes peeled for that one.
I'm coming round to him as time goes on. Yeah, I'll be very, very interested to see his performance in The Batman.
I know that some people still cling to Twilight, but after, like, Cosmopolis, Good Time, High Life...
Yeah, I mean...
It was High Life, wasn't it? The Claire Denis one. Pretty sure the one with him and Mia Goth. Whatever it was fucking brilliant.
Yeah, no, I've fully admitted, I think, or I've gradually admitted maybe over the years that perhaps I have some weird bias against him because there's something about him I just don't like. But I have to admit, I have seen some recent performances from him where he is genuinely good. So yeah, very, very excited for a bit of Korean sci-fi novel adaptation stuff. I just think it's got something,
well,
snappy.
It's going to be a short side better than what was that Netflix one that I said I would review that. Space garbage or space.
Oh, I do remember you reviewing it, yeah. And not being impressed.
Yeah, because I think we were both like quite amped for it, like sort of sci-fi actioner, like from South Korea, and it was very bleh.
There's one on Netflix at the moment I keep meaning to review. It's a series. I think it's called The Silent Sea, and I've noticed it occasionally creeping into the top 10 stuff. But that's a Korean sci-fi thing.
Oh, okay.
In fact, I might give that a look this week, and it might be the thing I review next week. But yeah, the trailer for that looked quite intriguing.
Well, K stuff is often very cool, man. So yeah.
Absolutely. This is annoying. This is from ScreenRant.com, by the way. Ridley Scott's Napoleon movie, Kit Bag, changes title.
Why?
Yeah, I really like the title, Kit Bag. The highly anticipated Napoleon Bonaparte / Empress Josephine epic from legendary director Ridley Scott has now changed its title from Kit Bag to an all-new one. I'd like you to guess, by the way, what the new title is.
Bonaparte.
No, that's actually better.
Is it just Napoleon?
It's just Napoleon.
But they already did that with was it Rod Steiger? He already starred in a biopic, I believe 1970 of Napoleon. It was just called Napoleon. What's wrong with Kit Bag's got an allure to it? It's an unusual title, and the relevance that it has in terms of the saying it comes from. That was a good decision.
Yeah, it came from the. There was an old naval saying apparently, which is there is a general's staff hidden in every soldier's kit bag.
Yeah.
Which is nice and evocative and
Yeah.
metaphorical.
That was a smart title.
I hate stuff like this as well because this is very obviously just a marketing decision.
Oh.
And they want, even if you're just going to be talking about the film, if someone overhears you talking about it on a bus, they want people to know that it's about Napoleon Bonaparte and it's a biopic, which, that's one thing. And I kind of get it. And maybe it's the marketing people compensating for the fact that The Last Duel did very badly in cinemas. Maybe they're blaming the title. I don't know. Maybe they're trying to.
Yeah.
But yeah, as you said, I think Kit Bag was evocative and it was punchy.
I saw a clip recently, actually, of Scott being interviewed alongside Jodie Comer. And the interviewer was a big fan of The Last Duel, and he was saying that he thought it was, he complimented the realism of it, but also said, like, oh, it's like your best film in a long time. And really, Scott was like, what you're saying, the other ones were shit, like, basically. And it's just, I do like the guy, but there really is no appeasing him. And
he's full into his grumpy old man stage, isn't he?
And it sounds, and the creative control he has over his projects. I mean, retitling it to Napoleon must be with his blessing.
Yeah,
which is just, I think, just divvy.
I don't know whether I'm completely spitballing here, but I sort of get the sense that maybe. Because you're right, he's so known for having complete control over his projects. To do a title change, you think, well, he must have been behind it. But this strikes me as my last film didn't do as well as I wanted it to. Maybe I should listen to the marketing guys. It's like, no, Ridley, no. Retain that auteur creative control thing. Kit Bag was a great title.
And he's very unconvinced that there was anything wrong. He said that he thought Disney put out a fabulous marketing campaign. So,
you rated The Last Duel as your favourite thing you saw last year.
I think The Last Duel is a fucking excellent film. I really do, and I do think it is Ridley's best movie in many years, and it's one of his best in general. But I remember he was absolutely satisfied with the marketing campaign of that. And he blamed it on millennials and their fucking phones.
Yeah, they don't want to go to the cinema. They watch everything on their phone, which, grumpy old man shakes fist at cloud, as usual. But no, it was a shame that it fell over because, by the sounds of it, it has some real good stuff going for it. But anyway, I'm sure the film will be good regardless. You got Joaquin Phoenix in the role. There's a little bit at the end of the article just as a summary of it, so I'll read that out for those that aren't aware. The historical epic explores Napoleon's origins and his rapid, brutal ascension to emperor from the perspective of his turbulent relationship with the Empress. The Apple Studios financed and produced film sees the reunion of Scott and Phoenix over 20 years after their first work together on their Best Picture Academy Award winner Gladiator in 2000. Napoleon is being written by David Scarpa, who previously collaborated with Scott as a writer on All the Money in the World. Scarpa is also writing another period epic for Paramount Pictures starring Wonder Woman actress Gal Gadot, based on the life of Cleopatra.
Oh, interesting.
I had to stop myself from calling her Gal Gadot there because that's the way I want to read it. Is Gal Gadot, isn't it?
It is. I thought it was Gal Gadot when I initially read, but no, it is in fact
like Bridget Bardot.
Yeah, it is in fact Gadot.
But I can totally see her as Cleopatra as well. By the way, that's a very good casting choice. Think of those magnetic eyes.
Josephine Napoleon is being played by Comer, isn't? That's correct, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm definitely interested in seeing the chemistry between Comer and Phoenix because, like, two actors that I admire very, very highly.
Yeah. The chemistry, I think. I mean, you never know when you get two actors in a room, do you? But they're both such staggering performers. I'd be very, very surprised if there wasn't some on-screen fireworks coming off both of them.
Most definitely, yeah.
Next article here. This is from Variety as well. Daniel Radcliffe is to play Weird Al Yankovic in Roku's first original biopic movie. Daniel Radcliffe.
Really?
Yeah. Daniel Radcliffe is set to star as Grammy-winning musician Weird Al Yankovic on the Roku original movie Weird, the Al Yankovic Story. The film is Roku's first original biopic and will be available to stream exclusively on the Roku channel. That's always a bad move. The project is produced by Funny or Die and Tango. Yankovic co-wrote the film's script with Eric Appel, who is also set to direct the project. The official Weird, the Al Yankovic Story synopsis from Roku reads, the biopic holds nothing back, exploring every facet of Yankovic's life, from his meteoric rise to fame with early hits like Eat It and Like a Surgeon, to his torrid celebrity love affairs and famously depraved lifestyle. Weird, the Al Yankovic Story, takes audiences on a truly unbelievable journey through Yankovic's life and career, from gifted child prodigy to the greatest musical legend of all time. Daniel
Radcliffe. What?
Seems like an odd choice, although I do rate Daniel Radcliffe, and I rate what he's done with his career.
I don't think he's bad at all. It's just a very I mean, Yankovic has got to be in comparison of towering height compared to Radcliffe.
He's a big guy, isn't he? Yeah, I've heard that.
And he doesn't look anything remotely like him. What are they going to do? Put him on stilts and give him a long curly wig? Or
probably, yeah. That's probably exactly what they're going to do. There's a statement from Weird Al himself, actually, which I really, really like. When my last movie, UHF, came out in 1989, I made a solemn vow to my fans that I would release a major motion picture every 33 years, like clockwork. I'm very happy to say we're on schedule. And I'm absolutely thrilled that Daniel Radcliffe will be portraying me in the film. I have no doubt whatsoever that this is the role future generations will remember him for.
Well, I'm not going to lie, I'm very intrigued, but simultaneously, from the outset, I'm baffled.
Yeah.
It is just a very weird casting choice.
Yeah, I'll be very, very interested to see it. I mean, Roku, it's their first original biopic. They've released films and various pieces of media in their own right. But I think stonewalling it away on their own platform is probably a bad sign. I think if you're that confident in a movie, you go, well, let's, obviously we want to promote our internal streaming service and all that kind of stuff. But surely you'd want some kind of theatrical release or deal for a future publication, future getting it out.
It would make sense, yeah.
Yeah, so when small companies stonewall content like that, I'm not for it. Both in a creative sense, it suggests the film doesn't have a huge budget, isn't going to go as far as it needs to. And I just think it's bad for audiences in general, because if you want to see it, you're either going to pirate it, which is, let's face it, what most people are going to do, or you're going to sign up for another streaming service. And how much does Roku really offer content-wise anyway in terms of original content? Not a huge amount as far as I've seen.
I'm not that familiar with them.
Yeah, it's more of a US thing, so we're a bit in the dark here in
Yeah.
our little crappy country over on the other side of the world, but there you go. My last article this week, Tom Holland failed to pitch young James Bond movie. I don't think 007 estate was interested. The search for the next James Bond following Daniel Craig's exit after No Time to Die will begin later this year. But it turns out Spider-Man actor Tom Holland already tried to pitch where 007 should go next. Speaking to Total Film magazine ahead of the release of Sony's video game adaptation Uncharted, Holland revealed he pitched the studio on a James Bond origin story movie in which the world's most famous spy will be a young man just starting out in the world of high-stakes espionage. I had a meeting after or during Spider-Man 2 with Sony to pitch this idea of a young Bond film that I'd come up with. It was the origin story of James Bond. It didn't really make sense. It didn't work. It was the dream of a young kid, and I don't think the Bond estate was particularly interested. I'd be kind of interested to see that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I get annoyed with prequels and origin stories and things. I think there's far too many of them. But James Bond's sort of shady past, it's always alluded to in the Bond films, isn't it? The death of his parents, they were away on a skiing holiday or something. He was raised by these groundskeeper in this big country estate and sent off to... I get the feeling there is a good film in there. And I can see Tom Holland doing it. He is quite a talented actor. So ordinarily I'm down on origin stories and prequels, but I think that actually might have been kind of interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I do like him. But again, even not being a massive Bond fan, I don't know what the thing is. I like what you were saying with not necessarily disdain, but a wariness when it comes to prequels and origin stories. I do just have, it's like when we were discussing recently about, I'm still not really sure how to feel about Heat 2, as a lot of people are calling it already.
Yeah, but I mean, it's a book, isn't it? So, like, I can kind of, get my gums around that, if you like.
Yeah, I don't know.
Heat to a movie, I would be quite down on.
Mystique is just a factor. I always love a good bit of mystique, and when people want to probe further than that, if the mystique is really effective, I don't know. Just
to me, it sounds like an origin story that might actually work. But there you go. I tell you what doesn't sound interesting: the Uncharted movie.
Uncharted.
Yeah, so this is based on a series of video games, the Uncharted games, which are very, they're good games. They're very cinematic.
What's the gist, like the nutshell gist?
Oh, Nathan, whatever his name is an explorer, and there's a different plot in every game, but he's sort of an Indiana Jones type character. It's like so the games are kind of aping Indiana Jones, but in a modern setting. Whereas I don't think that's going to work with them translating back into a film again. I saw the trailer. I wasn't particularly impressed. I don't think it's a particularly good idea. But obviously we'll watch it.
Over the ball?
No. It's actually quite a big release. I can't remember who's directing it, but it's actually quite a big release, this one. This isn't a B movie or a direct to streaming or whatever, it's going to be quite a big thing. But I've seen, I think they've released 2 or 3 trailers so far, and each one I just look at it and go, yeah, it's going to be one of those video games that doesn't translate. They never pick the right video games to translate into
What
film.
actually has been a good video game movie?
Good question. Really, really good question. Off the top of my head, I don't think I can think of one. But it doesn't mean it can't be done.
No, it doesn't mean it can't be done. No.
Yeah. Anyways, that's the end of our news segment this week. Liam, as usual, has a couple of film reviews for you. We've banged on together long enough. It's now solo time, Liam. Take us away.
Thank you, sir. Well, I toddled off to the local cinema thingamajig to watch Scream.
Yes.
Scream 5, or just going by the title, Scream.
Confusingly titled Scream.
Yes.
When the first one was titled Scream.
Clever little way that they do, because I think like one of the things that some fans were guessing is whether the title would have the letter S as the number 5.
Oh, I'm looking at the poster and it doesn't. That would have been a good idea, though.
Yeah, I just think Scream 5, just call it Scream 5. All the other ones have been numerically ordered, so just fucking do that. What the hell is your problem?
Yeah.
But anyway, so we open up in a scene that's very reminiscent of the original, very first opening scene, because it is sort of attempting to lovingly ape it. We open with a young woman named Tara Carpenter, played by Jenna Ortega, who, like Drew Barrymore was in 1996, is pottering around in her kitchen, home alone, one night, preparing some food, when the phone rings. And she picks the phone up, and a very familiar voice is on the line and saying he was trying to reach somebody who wasn't actually there, but this mutual acquaintance of theirs talks about this young woman, Tara, a lot, and the guy on the other end of the phone starts to awkwardly generate a conversation with her. And after a couple of minutes, he says to her, she told me that you really like scary movies. So what's your favorite scary movie? And being 2022 and after the advent of so many things in the millennium, Tara's answer is The Babadook. And she says because it's elevated horror and it has like a psychological and emotional complexity that you don't find it. And, she talks about how she's a big fan of elevated horror and how she loves stuff like not only The Babadook, but It Follows, Hereditary, The Witch. And the familiar voice goes, that's a bit fancy pants, isn't it? What's wrong with just a good old-fashioned slasher? Are they beneath you and stuff?
I see.
And he's like, what about the Stab movies? Don't you like the Stab films? The film series within the films, which just took Scream on that meta as hell trajectory. And he proposes a game. He will quiz her about the Stab films, and if she gets them all right, she's fine, he'll let her go. But if she gets an answer wrong, then her best friend Amber is going to be murdered. And it's also worth mentioning that this anonymous menace has also cloned Amber's phone, so he's been simultaneously terrorizing Tara through text messages as well. Basically, Tara gets attacked, but unlike the opening of the first film, she doesn't die. She's very badly hurt, but she does end up surviving. And so then we cut to a young lady named Sam Carpenter, who happens to be Tara's estranged elder sister. She left town many moons ago over a lot of familial tension and problems. They haven't seen each other in many years. And one of Tara's friends phoned Sam to tell her what happened. So Sam goes back to Woodsboro, the infamous town where all of these events have taken place over the years. She goes back with boyfriend and everything in tow, sees Tara at the hospital with all of her friend group, and they sort of uneasily reconcile. And they find out that Ghostface is striking yet again. The going theory is that somebody out there is upset with the direction that the Stab films are headed in a way that alludes to the aforementioned opening conversation about how everything has got to be elevated nowadays. Everything's got to make some sort of social commentary or be symbolic. What just happened to good, fun, uncomplicated serial killer slasher movies? Like, what's wrong with that? Why do we have to be so snobbish and pretentious in their mind? And the way that the killers are doing this is essentially their murders are what is referred to in the film as a requel, which is a combination of a reboot and a sequel, which is where you get all of the legacy characters and you structure the narrative in a way that's a love letter to the inaugural film, while simultaneously taking it in a bit of a new direction. A real world example of such a thing would be something like Ghostbusters Afterlife that we've talked about recently.
Sure, yeah.
So this film, brand new set of teens and, a unique motivation as the killers have had in each installment of the franchise, but bring in some legacy characters back as well. And they've all got to get to the bottom of who is doing this and why. And Tara and Sam are also juggling with quite an intense family secrets that I won't say anything about here, but it goes away as to explain why Tara was the initial victim or attempted victim of this killer. And so, yeah, that's the gist of Scream 5. Now, I've seen a lot of polarized opinions on this online, especially online. I've heard it in conversation with people as well, but I've seen some people going, this is the best of the Scream sequels, and easily another 50% going, it's the absolute worst. It seems to be split right down the middle, like far more so, this kind of polarized reception. I don't think, looking back at the reviews of any of the other films, they don't seem to have been this binary in terms of how they were received. So if we're saying that 10 it's the best Scream sequel and 1 is it's the worst Scream sequel, if we're doing it that way, I'd say I personally fall around a 5.5 mark. I like the franchise, and to expand on that a little bit more, I love the first film. I like the other films because at the end of the day, as far as I'm concerned, the Scream films all basically do the same thing. Number 1 does it exceptionally well, but 2, 3, and 4, it follows the same pattern. Somebody adopts the Ghostface identity. Roger L. Jackson's voice is used for every single instance, and the killer or killers in some instances are some way connected to the core group of characters. And, there's a big reveal at the end and they talk about why they did it. And that's it. That's the formula of the Scream franchise. And Scream 5 doesn't deviate from that. I mean, maybe it gets itself a little bit way down in the meta references, because within the opening, when they were talking about stuff like, ask me about The Witch, ask me about It Follows, Hereditary, I don't know about the Stab films, I love the Babadook, I love stuff like that. Talking about elevated horror, which is a very controversial term for reasons I understand, versus sort of uncomplicated slasher fun. Talking about requels and sequels and reboots and the dearth of original ideas in Hollywood. I liked that aspect. It does get a little bit carried away in terms of dialogue to the point where it's sort of, I think, starts to inadvertently disappear up its own arse. And also the way that it deals with the legacy characters, as they're called, because Dewey does turn up, David Arquette, Gail Weathers, Courtney Cox, and obviously Sidney Prescott, Neve Campbell. They all show up. And I think that the creators were looking for there to be some proper emotional clout there with their involvement, because it's been 10 years since the 4th installment and they're reunited once more. And I think that in arguably a bit of a fan servicey way, they've congregated them all to spearhead the tackling of this latest Ghostface menace. And it doesn't really land as strongly as I believe they hoped it would. And they make certain that there's a big decision that they make where I thought, that just felt cheap. That just felt really cheap. It didn't have the impact. I wish it had the impact that they were hoping for. I really wished that it had that on me, but it just didn't. It just took me out of it, and I found it quite frustrating. But the antagonists in this one, they didn't annoy the ever-loving shit out of me as the most recent installment did. People go on and on about like how Scream 4 was like such a resurrection of the franchise after 3. Firstly, I think 3 is hilarious. I think it's bags of fun. I think that the villain reveal is totally... I was pissing my pants laughing. Not in a derisive way, because these films are supposed to be funny. And I just think the fourth one, the antagonists were extraordinarily annoying. And that one did bog itself down in a mountain of self-reference as well.
I hated the fourth one. I couldn't stand the fourth one. I was so bored by it. It was so
I just thought
self-referential.
the villains in that were, because as far as I'm concerned, with Stu Maker, Billy Loomis, and then obviously the second one, you got Billy Loomis's mum and Timothy Oliphant. Thing with the Scream villain, I'm supposed to be freaked, creeped out by them, maybe sort of ever so slightly amused by them because they're so twisted. I'm pretty sure I'm not supposed to be annoyed as fuck by them. And that's what the two antagonists in Scream 4 did, and it sort of diminished my enjoyment a bit. I didn't encounter that problem in Scream 5. So I admire the fact that it's a tribute to Wes Craven. That was a nice touch, but it didn't really get by on that alone. So yeah, meta references go a little bit too heavy. The way they used the legacy characters wasn't as good as it could have been. But as a Scream film, I think it works. I think it works pretty much as well as 2, 3, and 4 did, because Scream 1 is the masterpiece. The inaugural Scream is the masterpiece. The other ones are just, they're enjoyable. They're fun. None of them hold a candle to the first film. So yeah, Scream 5, if you like the franchise, watch it. It's fun enough. So yeah,
but just nothing much to write home about otherwise.
No, it is that halfway point. It's just like some people overwhelmingly dislike it, and I certainly didn't feel that way about it, but I didn't come out of it thinking this is awesome, I need to recommend it. It's just that if you enjoy the Scream films, it's a decent enough addition. So, I mean, yeah, sorry not really fly either way in terms of awesomeness or ragging. But yeah, that's
5 out of 10, thumb in the middle.
Yeah, it didn't suck, but neither was it great. It was just, that
was a Scream film.
That was serviceable, basically. And next up, The Tragedy of Macbeth. Now,
yeah, I've been really curious about this.
Now, this is Joel Cohen working for the very first time without his brother Ethan. Obviously, we're obviously very big Coen Brothers fans. And when I found out that it was going to be a lone Coen brother doing this, I thought, well, wow, I just didn't think that. Does that happen? Is that physically possible?
Yeah, they're sort of like Siamese twins.
Yeah, but
so it's very un-PC. These are conjoined twins.
Yeah, and created just sort of such phenomenally brilliant work together. But yeah, Joel struck out on his own to adapt for the screen and direct Shakespeare's Macbeth, or the Scottish play for the superstitious among you.
We're not in a theatre. I'm sure we can get away with it.
Yeah. I don't know, man. Even as a rationalist and heavy skeptic, some superstition just freaks me out.
You watch, none of this audio will be usable.
Yes.
the curse of Macbeth.
I mean, summary. Yeah, I suppose a quick summary of the Tragedy of Macbeth, which is the actual full title of the play. So, 11th century Scotland. Macbeth is a thane, which is basically it's a royal official in medieval Scotland that I found out it was equivalent in rank to the son of an earl. So they're reasonably high up. So he's the thane of Glamis, and he's also quite a well-respected general in the army of King Duncan. And they've just had a very successful battle. And while Macbeth is making his way home, across barren fields with his associate Banquo, played here by Bertie Carvel. I don't know if I mentioned, but Macbeth is Denzel Washington, by the way, which is quite a... I mean, I just remember, again, first reading Macbeth is going to be played by Denzel. That's just... I'm going to have to just zip out to see this immediately. So Macbeth and Banquo are making their way across some fields, and they encounter the Weird Sisters, which is how is the name that most commonly refers to characters otherwise known as the Witches or the Wayward Sisters. But the three Weird Sisters, who in this film are all played by one person, Catherine Hunter. And, after the hurly-burly's done and the
Hubble bubble, toil and trouble,
they encounter her, and she says, Macbeth, you were Thane of Glamis, but you are now Thane of Cawdor as well. Now, the Thane of Cawdor has been captured by Duncan's forces as a traitor and is due for execution. And Macbeth says, but the Thane of Cawdor lives. How can I be Thane of Cawdor? And she does a bit more prophesying. Beth and Banquo, they make it back. They greet King Duncan, who's played here by Brendan Gleeson, and his son and heir, Malcolm, who's played by Harry Melling, who a lot of people would know as, was it Dudley Dursley? And they announce that Thane of Cawdor is being held captive and he is due to be executed, and after that his title will pass on to you. And so Macbeth and Banquo are a little bit freaked out and said, oh, okay, that weird freaky bitch out in the wilderness was correct. And then the witch also prophesied that not only will he be Thane of Cawdor, but he will soon be king. Writes this in a letter to Lady Macbeth, his good wife, played by Frances McDormand. And Lady Macbeth is already drunk with power, or notions of power, upon hearing this news. She starts to get in her husband's ear about forcibly taking the crown for himself. Which, I mean, this isn't a big deal. Is it spoiling Macbeth? Doesn't everyone know?
Yeah, I'd say leave it where it is.
Okay, yeah. So Lady
Macbeth,
he's
had this prophecy that he might. Yeah.
Lady Macbeth gets in her husband's ear about taking the crown for himself, and then much mayhem of sort ensues. Okay, so I mean, I love the tale. I just love the tale in general. I've not so long ago I watched most of the Justin Kurzel one with Michael Fassbender, and that was pretty good. And I've seen the one, with Orson Welles and stuff. I just think Macbeth is a great tale.
It is. It's just one of Shakespeare's best.
It is. It is. It's just got an excellent story. It's a really, really compelling tale. The only thing I'm not going to sit here and pretend that hearing Shakespeare's work, I struggled often with Shakespeare's words. There's some of it I do understand, but there's just a lot of, I'm not very adroit at the understanding of Elizabethan English. So even when, there's a particularly excellent delivery of one of the soliloquies, I'm just thinking like, well, this is really emotionally rapturous, but I don't actually know what the fuck he's saying. And I can admit that. But sometimes, you just have the sentiment communicated.
Yeah, it's more about the rhythm of the delivery.
Absolutely.
The pentameter.
Absolutely. Yeah. And honestly, I'm not just saying this. Denzel Washington makes an excellent Macbeth. Honestly, when he launches into his tirades, when he becomes full of fury and anxiety and mortal fear and, paranoid anger, Denzel just the way that he fires the words out is absolutely fabulous. The way that he uses his countenance and all his usual idiosyncrasies, he translates all of that into the utterance of the dialogue here, and it really, really is compelling. Very compelling. I've seen some people criticising McDormand's performance as Lady Macbeth, saying that they don't really have much chemistry. I don't know what film they were watching, because I thought it worked perfectly. I thought that Frances McDormand, because I do love Frances McDormand, but genuinely not in a biased way. I really liked her performance as Lady Macbeth, because Frances McDormand has that wonderful way of portraying hard-edged characters who also seem like, there's a veneer there that is hiding a little bit of self-doubt or world weariness and, sort of mental haggardness. And I've always thought that McDormand does that brilliantly, and she brings that to this role. And I was really, really, I was really, really compelled by her work here. Duncan, Brendan Gleeson, he arguably only appears very briefly. Bertie Carvel as Banquo is also a particular standout. The cast fire off on all cylinders. That is without question. But I think the most astonishing thing about this film, that is important, but the most astonishing thing about this, the cinematography. The director of photography, Bruno Delmanel, I must admit, I wasn't actually familiar with him before, but it's shot in this crisp, astonishing black and white. It looks like a Bergman film. It looks like a 4K Bergman film. And it is just, and the set design, it's like watching, the set design has something of a, there's something of an artifice about it. The castles and a lot of the exterior shots. There seems to be something of an intentional artifice about it. There's a lot of it. It doesn't look particularly like a natural landscape, but that in tandem with this really, really fine sort of there's a warmth to the way the film is shot, but it also ups the ante on the eeriness quite a bit. And yeah, I just think that Cohen has made a really, really fabulous adaptation of this work here. It's that the photography is off the charts. Denzel really, really nails the title role because he does bring to it. He brings the insecurity, but he also brings the malevolence, the dichotomy of character that Macbeth is associated with. Because if Macbeth is played well, you should have some measure of disdain for him, but you should also feel some empathy for him.
He's a classic Shakespeare character. There's a lot of depth. And
Absolutely, yeah. He's a classic tragedy character. You know, I mean, yeah, he is ambitious and he is a selfish man and a barbaric and duplicitous man, but he's also being manipulated by a deeply malevolent spouse, I would say, and the way that it gradually plays with his grip on his sanity and the way he has to engage in even more brutality to try and cover his tracks for what he's done and sort of juggling, often unspokenly, for being contrite for what he's done and the sort of looming presence of the weird sisters who prophesied this. Catherine Hunter, I'd never come across her before. The one who plays the weird sisters, plays all three of them. And I read up on her. She's known for doing a lot of physical theatre. Honestly, mate, she is absolutely incredible as the weird sisters. Number one, she's terrifying because she contorts her form just in ways that look not natural in any way whatsoever. And she adopts different voices for each of the sisters as well. And I was just transfixed by her. And I mean, I was excited for her whenever I was always wondering when she was going to arrive on screen next. Not that I did really, really enjoy all of it, but just Hunter's incarnation of the Weird Sisters. It's spellbinding would be the word for it. But yeah, Tragedy of Macbeth, as directed by Joel Cohen, a really, really fascinating, well-made piece of work. I liked it very much. I thought it was a really, really solid adaptation of the play. And you might struggle a little bit with the language as I did, but if you just want to see tour de force acting and all the cinematographic ingredients just done right, just recipeed right, it's a stunner.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm always a big fan of a good Shakespeare adaptation. So
check it out, man.
I'll be definitely doing this one. Yeah, for sure. Okay, then. So, TV of the week. And this is a curious one. This is called Stay Close.
Okay, I haven't heard anything about this.
Really, because it's been quite big on Netflix since its release. In fact, it's stayed in like the top 5 in the UK ever since.
Is it a British show?
It is indeed.
Oh,
yeah.
I think my parents might have watched this.
It's been making a lot of waves. This. So, Stay Close is a British mystery drama miniseries.
James Nesbitt.
It is indeed.
Sorry,
James Nesbitt.
I just popped into my So I have heard about this. Sorry.
Based on the 2012 Harlan Coben novel of the same title. Now, Harlan Coben wrote The Innocent, which was one of my favorite things in the New Year's roundup.
The Spanish one.
Yeah. But it was based on a Harlan Coben novel, and it was one of my favorite things I saw last year. I just thought it was so beautifully well layered in its in its writing, in the way it was scripted and put together. It was just a mystery that you couldn't put down. So very excited to watch this, actually, and particularly seeing it repeatedly pop up in the top 10. Everyone's talking about it, that kind of thing. Thought I have to go and give this a watch. So let's do the setup on this then. This opens with a pre-title sequence, pre-credit sequence, in which we see a young man going to a very neon-lit nightclub somewhere out in the English woodlands. This nightclub is called Vipers. And it sort of looks, it's a bit kind of 80s vibe, but deliberate 80s, neon pinks and greens, that kind of thing. He's in there in his Larry shirt. He's a young dude. He's having a good time. He's chatting to people. You get this montage of strippers on poles, and there's drag acts going on in stage and drinking. And we see an overhead shot of a couple of cocktails being swapped around. And then we cut to the outside of the nightclub, and this guy is now stumbling around a little bit, and the camera's doing that sort of blur effect. You know that classic someone's been drugged kind of thing
Yes,
where you
yeah,
get
yeah.
sort of repeating frames and that kind of thing. He's stumbling around outside this nightclub and he runs off into the woods behind it where there were these sort of spooky ruins and old brick structures and things. And he's running through the woodlands and he's shouting off, "I'll get you. I'll find you. I'll get you." And we then get our title sequence. And we meet the second of our characters, Megan, played by Cush Jumbo. Remember I reviewed Kill the Beast or The Beast Must Die, whatever it was, with
Yes, yeah.
with Jared Harris. Yeah, and I rated Cush Jumbo very, very highly. She played a perfect, that counterplay between her and Jared Harris was brilliant. Really, really enjoyed that show. But yes, Cush Jumbo playing Megan Pierce. And she's sort of an everyday mum at the start of this show. We see her coming back from the shops, unloading her shopping from her car into this really, really nice sort of middle upper class house. She's got this beautiful family around her. Her fiance, her husband to be, Dave Shaw, played by Daniel Francis, is sort of joking and messing around with the kids. She's trying to get her teenage children to help her with the shopping. They won't. They're having all this banter back and forth. They've got quite an idyllic and lovely family life. Megan and Dave are, as I said, about to be married. And Megan is very anxious to get ready for her hen party that evening. So she gets herself all dolled up and she goes out with the girls. And they go off to this very nice bar. They have a lovely evening. A stripper turns up, but they've actually hired him to do life drawings of him, which they all find kind of hilarious. I guess that's a middle upper class way of subverting the stripper trope on your hen do. Is that a thing people do? I have no idea. This show says it's true, so I'm going to believe it.
Never heard of it, but they should do maybe.
Yeah.
Something different.
She's having a lovely evening with her friends. Hen do all goes down perfectly well, having a lot of drinks and everything. She gets back late at night, gets out of the taxi, a little bit drunk, and she walks up to her doorstep and she finds a bottle of champagne waiting for her and a card attached to it. And the card is addressed to Cassie. And Megan, rather than reacting strangely to it, going, "Weird, who left this here?" Suddenly all the color drains from her face and the soundtrack rises a little bit. And she starts looking very paranoid over her shoulders. Who the hell's left this here? So she takes the bottle of champagne inside. She opens the card. It says something like, "Congratulations on your marriage." But when she opens it, there's no writing inside the card. And she checks her CCTV for this very lovely home that they have. And she can see somebody dropping the bottle off, but they're hooded and wearing a big jacket, and she can't actually see their face. So as she's sitting there all freaked out by this, Dave, her husband, or husband-to-be rather, comes downstairs and she plays everything off as everything's fine. And he goes, "Oh, you were about to watch some porn on the laptop, weren't you?" He's getting a bit excited about everything. She goes, "Oh, yeah, that's what it was. That's what it was. Let's go to bed." It's at this point that we meet sort of the police procedural element of this show, which is Detective Michael Broom, played by, as you said, James Nesbitt. Now, if you want an Irish detective or just a detective in general, James Nesbitt is your man. I mean, I've lost count of how many police procedural British TV programs where James Nesbitt is DCI James McBarron, DCI, John McTwee. They're all Mooks. I don't know why. He's not in this. He's a broom. But yes, James Nesbitt.
Is that a comment on his acting style as well? Or?
Well, we'll get to that. But yes, James Nesbitt is playing a detective once more. He is Detective Michael Broom, and he's a bit pissed off actually because he's been moved into these new fancy offices. They've got this new police station that is all very hipster. It's all sort of neon colors on the walls and exposed ventilation ducts, and everyone's got glass desks. And they all hot swap their desks, which he hates because he's an old school detective and he wants his own desk. So he ends up writing his name in marker on one of these desks. This is Broom's desk. And he's just generally being a cantankerous detective. And he's got his partner, Erin Cartwright, who's played by Joe Joyner, who we quickly learn is actually his ex-wife. But they had an amicable breakup. They're still working together on the force. Everything's going fine for them. It all turned out okay. And he's asked by his boss, his incredibly young boss, actually, unbelievably young boss,
to 14.
He looks about 12. Yeah. And you just think to yourself, how the hell did this guy get put in that kind of position? But anyway, he gets called in with his partner and his boss says, "Look, you need to go and talk to this guy that's been calling the police station. He's essentially a very, very powerful person. He's got some contacts within the force and his son's gone missing." And Detective Broom goes, well, how long has he been missing for? It's like a day and a half at this point. But because he's got contacts within the organization, it would just do this for me. Would you go and have a chat to him, take down his details and all of that, and we'll get to the bottom of what's going on here. So they get in the car, they drive out to this beautiful, very modern, contemporary British house to find Del Flynn, played by Ross Boatman. Now, this guy's a bit of a diamond geezer come good. He's got the loud Larry shirt. He's got the gold chain. He's a bit of a geezer. He's got the trophy wife and all that. No one's quite sure how he's made his money and ended up in this multi-million-pound house. But it turns out that his missing son is Carlton Flynn, played by Connor Calland. And he was the guy that we saw stumbling around in the pre-credits sequence, shouting off into the woods. One more moving part to get in here because there's quite a lot of it, and I'm scything through it and trying to get to the crux of the matter. But there's one more important character which I need to mention, which is we also meet Ray Levine, played by Richard Armitage.
Okay, yeah.
Who is a photographer, a bit down on his luck. He's actually hiring himself out as a paparazzi for hire. So if you're a young person going to a party and you want to look more famous than you are, you hire him. And he turns up with his professional camera and pretends to bug you for a bit. You knock him away and everyone thinks, oh my God, this guy's being chased by the paparazzi. Isn't it a cool guy? So he's a professional photographer, but he's a bit down on his luck. He's doing a gig one day, sort of feeling a bit down for himself and his life. And on his way back to the car, someone knocks him over the back of the head and takes his very expensive camera from him. And later on, when he looks at the photos on his camera and looks through just everything he's photographed in the past few weeks, he notices that when he went out to take photos of the ruins behind Vipers, which he quite often does because they're interesting architecture, he actually has a photo of Carlton Flynn, the missing man. And so he anonymously sends these photos into the police. So we've got a few different threads going on there. Obviously, it's a mystery, kind of a whodunit kind of thing. So I'm not going to go much further than that, but it's important that those are the primary players in the piece. So everything I've said so far, I think, probably sounds like a standard police procedural kind of fare. You've got people with obviously hidden pasts coming up. You've got Megan and why she's so freaked out with this bottle of champagne that's got someone else's name written on it. So obviously there's loads going on back with her character. You've got two coppers investigating a missing person. And you've got a photographer that's ended up finding. These are all sort of police procedural elements that you find in just about any of these sort of gritty British cop show kind of things.
Yeah.
Except this one's weird.
Weird.
It's really weird. It can't decide on a tone. 1 minute it's a gritty British police procedural detective cop thriller. 1 minute it's a character drama about this person's dubious past, shall we say. And occasionally it just throws in elements of the absolute surreal that don't fit in the slightest. It's like little drops of food coloring suddenly in your... I'm going to do a food analogy. I haven't done a food analogy in ages. This is like eating your bowl of police procedural detective soup. And then every now and then you put your spoon in the bowl, you pull it up and it's bright green. And you go, that's weird. And you eat it and then it goes back to being soup again. And you go, oh, okay, soup. And then you go, and now you get neon orange and neon pink and things like that. There's a couple of contract killers that turn up in this that are two young people called Ken and Barbie. They're contract killers and they hunt people down for a mysterious force working in the background. But they do dance routines before every job, choreographed musical dance routines.
What?
And this is sort of shoved in the middle of this police procedure where we're trying to track down this missing person. One of the big conceits with this show, one of the things revealed quite early, is that Michael Broom, our detective, James Nesbitt, figures out that the missing person, Carlton, has gone missing on the same day exactly as somebody that went missing 17 years ago. And it was a cold case, a case that he was never able to solve, and it sort of bugged him all the while since, which is kind of a spurious thing in the first place, you'd think, for a detective to suddenly go, that's exactly the same date someone disappeared 17 years ago. They must be linked in some form or fashion. And that's a really, really important plot conceit in the show, but it's far from the only time I was watching it going, that's a bit of a reach. That's a bit of a stretch. This is one of those ones that gradually, as it goes on, every single person is involved in some form or fashion. And again, you're thinking, so what? So conventional. Mayor of Easttown is like that, where everybody in her life is somehow connected to the case she's working on. That's not an unusual thing for a police procedural to do. In this show's hands, it becomes absurd really, really quickly. There's one episode in particular that ended with someone in a hooded jumper being nefarious and you can't see their face. And they turn around to reveal who they are. And I literally threw my hands up and went, what the fuck? So everybody is somehow involved in this case backwards and forwards. There's something really unbelievable about it. And yet, weirdly, it sort of works. It can't settle on whether to be absurd and surrealistic or gritty and realistic. It never ever finds a happy balance between the two of them. But because it's throwing just these bits of food dye, these bits of coloring into it where you don't expect them to be, because it's making these big leaps in logic where you just go, never in a million years does that narratively make sense. But you can't take your eyes off of it. And I think that is the intended effect. I think the idea is to be so left field and out there at points and then go back to being regular that you must know what happens next. This is definitely one of those ones where me and my girlfriend stayed up late at night because we wanted to find out where it was going. It's got some really gaping plot holes in it as well. Some really big ones where I'm just like, how did that even get past? At one point, two characters are trapped in a room and the episode ends. And the next episode begins and they're out of the room and they don't say anything about it. and I was me and my girlfriend were sitting there going, we must have missed something. So we went back to watch the end of the last episode and then the way it segues into the new one. No. It just completely ignores it. And in the last episode as well, it just makes some leaps in logic. There are so many points in this show where I'm just like, bollocks. You know when you actually feel like you have to say out loud, oh, fuck off.
Yeah.
There's no way. But somehow, weirdly, that balance between the realistic and the surreal and the absurd, although it never finds a happy medium, it makes it really, really watchable. Because you're scoffing at it the whole way through, going, that's a bit rubbish. And
so
sure you could have written it better.
The uneasiness of the tonal shifts is actually entertaining enough
to
make it worth a watch.
But it's not good. Do you know what I mean? I don't know. I get the feeling this was a fantastic book and it's the adaptation that's sort of full. But then there's a lot going for the adaptation. Every performance in this is fantastic, by the way. Every single performance. I've always rated Cush Jumbo. Everything I've ever seen her in, she's been fantastic, particularly in the
I've always thought James Nesbitt was quite solid.
Yeah, if you want your reliable cop that ends up going through a shocking dilemma and he's got this thread he has to pull because he's seen a connection in the case. You know, as you said, James Nesbitt is perfect at doing that and he's very, very good here. Every single performance is great. Eddie Izzard turns up in it.
Eddie Izzard?
Yeah, as Harry Sutton, who's Megan's, shall we say, lawyer from another time is the way I'll put that, to very carefully dance around spoilers. Eddie Izzard, I love him a lot. I think he's a brilliant stand-up comedian. I've never been entirely convinced by him as an actor. Perhaps he is ever so slight. It's not a terrible performance, but Eddie Izzard is so Eddie Izzard, you can't see anything but Eddie Izzard. And that's the problem he's got in this show. But otherwise, it's really well acted. It's quite pacey. And in a way, I kind of wish that it was more of a straight-ahead, gritty detective police procedural thriller. But those dashes of weird color, the way it shifts color palettes, the way it's got this, everything's very well lit and bright and breezy at points as well. And it's such a tonal clash, but it adds an unpredictable element to the piece that I actually ended up really enjoying. And the final episode does tie everything together, all these different moving parts, in quite a satisfying way. And in a way that I didn't see coming. There are plenty of points during this where I thought I had everything figured out, and actually I didn't even get close to what the final conclusion ended up being. So that's got to say something for the writing as well. I mean, this guy knows what he's doing writing a book, and the adaptations so far have been fantastic. This one is just really, really weird, but I did enjoy it. I did have a good time with it, and I would cautiously recommend it. Just be prepared to throw your hands up and go, that's bullshit. There's no way that would happen.
That's quite a recommendation.
In a million years. Yeah, it's one of the weirdest things I've seen in some time, actually. It's unsettling and not in the way it's trying to be. But yeah, I do think it's a good piece of work. I can see why it's getting so much fun.
Somewhat intrigued.
Yeah, give it a go. But yeah, be prepared to shout at your television, I suppose.
Go, what? You what, mate?
Okay, then. Well, finish out with some trivia, as we usually do. What a perfect opportunity with you reviewing the Tragedy of Macbeth this week to do some William Shakespeare trivia.
Why not? Why not, indeed?
Can't believe we've almost up to 100 free episodes and obviously almost up to 100 premium episodes. So 200 hours plus of content we've got at the moment. We've never, ever done Shakespeare.
Never done Shakespeare.
Yes. So let's start out with this. Shakespeare's father held a lot of different jobs and at one point got paid to drink beer.
Bastard.
The son of a tenant farmer, John Shakespeare, was nothing if not upwardly mobile. He arrived in Stratford-upon-Avon in 1551 and began dabbling in various trades, selling leather goods, wool, malt, and corn. In 1556, he was appointed the borough's official ale taster, meaning he was responsible for inspecting bread and malt liquors. The next year, he took another big step up the social ladder by marrying Mary Arden, the daughter of an aristocratic farmer who happened to be his father's former boss. John later became a moneylender and held a series of municipal positions, serving for some time as the mayor of Stratford. In the 1570s, he fell into debt and ran into legal problems for reasons that remain unclear.
Oh, wow. I've never really heard anything about his dad, to be honest.
Yeah, it sounds like his dad had a hell of a life. I wonder if that was any influence on Shakespeare's writings. Yeah. Speaking of which, actually, and this is one of the interesting things about this period of history, nobody knows what Shakespeare did between 1585 and 1592. To the dismay of his biographers, Shakespeare disappears from the historical record between 1585, when his twin's baptism was recorded, and 1592, when the playwright Robin Greene denounced him in a pamphlet as an upstart crow. The insult suggests that he'd already made a name for himself on the London stage by then. What did the newly married father and future literary icon do during those 7 lost years? Historians have speculated that he worked as a school teacher, studied law, travelled across continental Europe, or joined an acting troupe that was passing through Stratford. According to one 17th century account, he fled his hometown after poaching deer from a local politician's estate. Lives in general were just a lot more interesting back then.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Everything was just very novelesque, wasn't it? Just
successful playwright. I mean, he might have been this, he might have been that. He might have poached a deer from a politician. We'll never know. Yeah. Shakespeare wore a gold hoop earring, or so we think. Our notion of William Shakespeare's appearance comes from several 17th century portraits that may or may not have been painted while the bard himself sat behind the canvas. In one of the most famous depictions, known as the Chandos portrait, after its one-time owner, the subject has a full beard, a receding hairline, loosened shirt ties, and a shiny gold hoop dangling from his left ear. Even back in Shakespeare's time, earrings on men were trendy hallmarks of a bohemian lifestyle, as evidenced by images of other Elizabethan artists. The fashion may have been inspired by sailors, who sported a single gold earring to cover funeral costs in case they died at sea.
Oh, wow.
I never knew that genesis for it. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's the thing. Like with the Chandos portrait, I was always, first time I ever saw that and noticed that Shakespeare had an earring, I was just a bit sort of, I was quite taken aback by it. I just didn't know that was a fashion in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, you wouldn't think so in Elizabethan England, would you? But yeah, it seems to have a long genesis. And yeah, I just love that fact about the sailors. It makes a lot of sense to have some valuable material on your person that can't come off. If your body gets found, it covers the cost of burial.
Very, very, very pragmatic. Very pragmatic thinking.
North America's 200 million starlings have Shakespeare to thank for their existence. William Shakespeare's works contain more than 600 references to various types of birds, from swans and doves to sparrows and turkeys. The starling, a lustrous songbird with a gift for mimicry native to Europe and Western Asia, makes just one appearance in Henry IV Part 1. In 1890, an American bardolator named Eugene Schifflin decided to import every kind of bird mentioned in Shakespeare's oeuvre, but absent from the United States. As part of this project, he released 2 flocks of 60 starlings in New York's Central Park. 120 years later, the highly adaptable species has taken over the skies, becoming invasive and driving some native birds to the brink of extinction.
Smart move.
That's a new level of fandom, isn't it? We think it's bad with the internet these days, but this guy loves Shakespeare so much he decided to import every single bird. That's such a weird thing to do. It's such a strange, odd thing to do. My tribute to Shakespeare, 600 different types of bird.
Yeah, as you say, super fandom.
Yeah.
They do interesting things.
They took it hardcore back in those
Absolutely,
days.
mate.
Shakespeare's epitaph wards off would-be grave robbers with a curse. William Shakespeare died on April 23rd, 1616 at the age of 52. Not bad for an era where the average life expectancy ranged between 30 and 40 years. We may never know what killed him, although an acquaintance wrote that the bard fell ill after a night of heavy drinking with fellow playwright Ben Jonson. Despite his swift demise, Shakespeare supposedly had the wherewithal to pen the epitaph over his tomb, which is located inside a Stratford church. Intended to thwart the numerous grave robbers who plundered England's cemeteries at the time, the verse reads, "Good friend, for Jesus' sake forbear, to dig the dust enclosed here. Blessed be the man that spares these stones, and cursed be he that moves my bones." It must have done the trick, since Shakespeare's remains have never been disturbed.
Wow.
So Shakespeare wrote a curse on his own grave.
And it even started, I would have thought like some very opportunistic criminal would have thought, get the remains or, part of the funerary.
As far as I was aware, he was quite well off at the time when he died as well. So I imagine he would have been buried with some form of finery. There was something of a tradition of that at the time. Or maybe because grave robbing was such a thing at the time, maybe you weren't. But one way or the other, he felt it necessary to pen a little ode.
I've seen the funerary bust inside the church at Stratford-upon-Avon, and it's fucking creepy.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wouldn't that be a great horror movie?
Yeah.
Shakespeare rises from the grave because he really was cursed, Yeah.
Or like or maybe even a super fan makes a pilgrimage to the church and more of some of the more nefarious characters from his play come to life. That'd be a cool little sort of horror thing.
Someone listening, write it.
Yes,
we will review it.
We can't be bothered.
And my last fact here: Shakespeare's will was slightly strange. The only thing Shakespeare left to his wife in his will was the second best bed in his house. His will reads, "I give unto my wife my second best bed with the furniture." The furniture refers to the linen for the bed. I mean, what the fuck, Anne Hathaway, man? What did you do? Like, there's something quite petty about that. I mean, again, he did do fairly well throughout his life. I mean, he wasn't mega rich or anything, I don't think, but he had a house.
He had a few quid.
He had assets. Yeah, the wife gets left.
Second best bed.
Second best bed.
Maybe she was an absolutely brilliant, lovely wife, and the bard, as much of a genius as he was, maybe he was just a bastard.
Or maybe it could have been, she might have had control of the money already. Maybe she already had it and he had technically nothing to give. I don't know. Or it could have been, to me, it sounds like a running joke. Sounds like they had an argument over beds at some point. And he sort of, Shakespeare liked to joke, didn't he? He wrote many, many comedies. So maybe it's that sort of last.
My beloved, this knackered old shitty bed.
Yeah. Yeah. Not the good one. The good one goes to my sister. Yeah. But anyway, yes, that brings us to the end of our podcast this week. Thank you so much for listening. We're going to go and record the premium podcast now. Liam's got an extra take to review. What are you reviewing this week?
I am going to be talking about a new film called Red Rocket by the brilliant Sean Baker.
Ah, cool. Awesome. And over the New Year period when we were in isolation, the BBC, weirdly, I think it was on New Year's Day, did a Michael Caine Day, where they played a lot of his films and interviews and a piece of footage I'd never ever seen before, actually, of Michael Caine giving an acting class in the 80s.
Oh, wow.
Which is really, really interesting. And it suddenly made me think that out of all the actors that we've covered over our many, many episodes, we've never actually done a Michael Caine special.
You don't want to do it like that. You want to do it like this.
Yeah, I would expect many bad Michael Caine impressions over the course of this.
Horrendously bad.
Not a lot of people know that, etc. But yeah, we're going to talk about, I'm actually going to do a little bit of a mini review of the Ipcris Files, because I never sat down and watched it all the way through before, and it's an interesting film. And yeah, we're going to have a discussion about Michael Caine, the actor, and some of our favourite pieces of work. And I've got a load of quotes for him at the end as well, because he's very, very quotable.
He's an immensely quotable man.
So yeah, not a lot of people know that indeed. If you'd like to check out our premium podcast, which not a lot of people know about, please check out our Patreon page at cinementalist.com. There's a link there. You can find all our premium content. We release 4 premium podcasts a month when we're not dying from the terrible flu. You can follow us on Twitter at Cinementalcast. You can follow Liam at
the movies at Wacko Jackers Flicks.
And yeah, sort of does it for me, mate. Does it do it for you?
Yeah, I'll just also, as a little addendum, I'll say, if you can't watch any good films, then be a nosy neighbour. So just stockpiling the dreadful impressions.
Believe me, you're going to need them for the next episode. You're going to need them. We're going to have some fun with this one. Yeah. Thank you so much for listening, guys. I hope to see you on the premium. If not, free one next week. Take it easy.